Shalom, 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 Israel. This is Captain Paul Israel from Kingdom Builders of Israel, LLC. And today's class lesson is going to be on Yahweh's marriage laws versus worldly marriage laws, part 3. Okay, Israel, this is going to be the part 3 video lesson for Yahweh's marriage laws versus worldly marriage laws. Okay, Israel, so get out a pen and notepad or just sit back and just look at these visuals that's going to be on this particular video to understand what's going on here when you compare the difference between Yahweh's laws of marriage versus, of course, in general, worldly laws of marriage. Okay. So let's get into it. So in this PowerPoint slide, we have worldly marriage laws. So this is going to go into the worldly marriage laws of understanding that we have primarily in America. Okay, you know, other countries may do other stuff as well as far as have their different versions of marriage laws. But right now we're going to pertain it to America's marriage laws of understanding, because we know America is basically going to go into worldly understanding on what marriage is. Okay. So let's get started. So it says worldly marriage laws. It says marriage in the United States is a matter of state law. Each state has its own requirements for marriage. The only federal law about marriage is that a marriage in one state is valid in every other state. So this is just going into the understanding that the United States of America, you know, is a matter of state law. So United States of America validates marriage based upon state law that you have to have, of course, in general, the marriage certificate. Based upon being approved by that state in America to say this person is married. Okay, and the source of this understanding is going into www.findlaw.com. Okay, when it goes into family, marriage, state laws on marriage. Okay, so this is a particular source website that you see right here. Okay, that it was found that this understanding was given on state law or the federal law of understanding based upon marriage being valid in a certain state. Okay, so the state within the country of America, they're saying that they are the ones validating a marriage between two people. So that's the compare and contrast of understanding from a worldly perspective, where the state is approving a particular marriage between a couple. But we know, according to this Bible, marriage is ordained by the Most High Yah. Point blank, period. Okay? Yahweh's laws pertaining to marriage is what really validates a marriage. But of course, in general, of a worldly standpoint, the state within America validates a particular marriage. Okay, you see the difference, as you can see. This is why the title of this slide right here says worldly marriage laws. So this has nothing to do with the Bible marriage laws. Okay, because we have many Black, Hispanic, and Native American women trying to validate marriage based upon the state. And this is why majority of the time the Black and Hispanic women, they're mainly the ones filing for divorce from their husband on a majority scale, because they're going by the understanding of state law rules when it pertains to marriage. Okay. The Black, Hispanic, Native Indian women are not going off the understanding of the Bible. Just like the men in general, the Black, Hispanic, Native Indian men, they're primarily going off a worldly base of understanding of marriage as well. Okay. And this is why they're making the mistakes on choosing ungodly women, because they're basing the understanding of marriage based upon a worldly perspective of marriage. So the Hebrew men, the Black, Hispanic, Native Indian men, they need to be choosing a wife based upon the Bible's instructions. They need to be following Yahweh's laws pertaining to marriage according to this Bible for the marriage to be what? Successful. Okay? So this is the understanding that I'm giving. So again, worldly marriage laws, this is what it's getting into, where the state in the actual country of America validates a couple's marriage. But we know in general, the Bible doesn't say these things, that a state validates a marriage. The Bible says Yahweh is the one that validates the marriage according to his righteousness, which goes into his commandments. Point blank, period. So let's go to the next slide. It says worldly marriage laws. So this is basically going to give the different types of the marriage laws of understanding that America primarily pushes in America, okay, when it pertains to marriage. So basically this is going into certain type of titles, right, that's going to go into catering to marriage according to a worldly perspective on marriage laws in America. Okay, it says in this slide right here, it says there are different types of marriages that are conducted in the United States. Okay, so in the United States of America, right, there are different types of marriages. So when you read this understanding on down, it says civil marriage, common law marriage, civil union, and then it says same-sex marriage. So these are the primary different types of marriages that's basically conducted in America. But as you can see, these type of titles for marriage concept is not biblical. This is man-made concept. So civil marriage is man-made concept. Common law marriage is man-made concept. Civil union is based upon man-made concept. And then also same-sex marriage is based upon man-made concept from a basically worldly perspective. But none of these things are biblical, okay, as you can see. So now we go to worldly types of marriage laws. So we're going to break down, each point of the different types of marriage laws of understanding on these titles, okay? So the point I want to get to on this slide right here on the different worldly types of marriage laws, we're getting into the understanding of a civil marriage, okay? Civil marriage. So this is one particular type of laws pertaining to marriage in America that has a title that America goes by in the U.S., okay? It says civil marriage. This is what most people mean when they speak of marriage. It's sometimes called legal or traditional marriage. It may involve a formal marriage ceremony, but the couple must get a marriage certificate and a judge or officiant will perform the ceremony. All states recognize civil marriage. So all the states of America recognize civil marriage because the civil marriage has to get approved by the state, right? It has to have a judge involved or it has to be an officiant who is basically performing the marriage ceremony, okay, in order for them to be able to get a marriage certificate to validate the marriage within that state. Okay, so this is a worldly perspective of marriage, a civil marriage of understanding that the state has to approve these two couples as far as being married. And this is going to the marriage concept between husband and wife of understanding, male and female. Okay, but as you can see, civil marriage concept is not biblical. This is what America laws push for civil marriage to be conducted. As you can see in this understanding, this couple is operating from a worldly based perspective of marriage. Okay, as you can see the understanding. Common law marriage. So this is the next slide. It says common law marriage. So this is the next worldly type of marriage law of understanding. So it says common law marriage comes from a time when traveling to a court or a church was difficult. They were a couple if two people lived together and held themselves out as married. 8 states still recognize common law marriage. So common law marriage concept to a certain degree is a base of biblical standpoint as far as when two partners have sexual relations, right, without a lot of people knowing about it. But if the couple confesses that, hey, we're married, of course, certain states recognize that these two partners, male and female, are quote unquote married. So 8 states still recognize common law marriage. But the common law marriage primarily is not biblical overall, because the couple has to go to the state to get approved to say that they are married, okay, legally. So that's what makes this common law marriage not biblical. But the stance of the concept of two partners having sex without the actual license from the beginning, they can say that they are married based upon sexual relations being conducted prior before the marriage certificate. Okay. But the issue with the common law marriage overall being not biblical is because the couple has to get approved through the state wherever they living at, which basically is out of these 8 states in America. They have to go to one of these 8 states of America to validate their marriage through the state. Okay. Which makes it not biblical, because the Bible doesn't say man and female have to go through the state to validate their actual marriage as far as being legit. Okay. But the concept as far as the understanding of sex being involved, initiating a marriage, is coming from the Bible base. So that's why they usher in the common law marriage. But the difference of understanding is the common law marriage, a person has to go through the state to justify their marriage being legit, which makes this part not biblical. Okay. It says next point. Other states will recognize their marriage if their state recognizes common law marriage and if they prove their marriage is valid in that state. So again, the couple has to validate their marriage in that state where they live in to say that they are married according to common law marriage, even though sex occurred, which in general substantiate the marriage according to Yahweh's righteousness. But in general, common law marriage has its error because it's going through the state of understanding. And also, majority of these people that do common law marriage are not biblical law keepers. So again, the common law marriage promotes unrighteousness behavior to be conducted because it's not governed by Yahweh's laws pertaining to marriage. Okay. So this is another type of marriage laws from a worldly perspective, but none of this understanding is biblical. Okay. Common law marriage continue in this next slide. It says a common law marriage is a legally recognized marriage that occurs without a marriage license or ceremony. To establish a common law marriage, a couple must have an agreement to be married, have a permanent relationship, be exclusive and live together as a married couple, present themselves publicly as a married couple. So again, as you can see, the similarities that the common law marriage is trying to mimic the biblical stance on marriage. But the issue is the couple that's saying that they are married have to go through the state to get approved to say that they are legally married. Okay, based upon certain things have to occur. Okay, so that's what makes the common law marriage not biblical overall, based upon the state have to approve this marriage as being justified. So as you can see, man that runs these laws in these states understand that sex is technically marriage. Okay, this is why they have a common law marriage concept, as you can see. But again, overall, Yahweh's laws pertaining to marriage is the one that we're supposed to be focused on. not these worldly marriage concepts of understanding, because the worldly concept of marriage is all man-made. So in this next slide, you have civil union. So this is another type of marriage law concept. Okay, it says civil union. It says some states recognize civil unions, also called domestic partnerships, as an alternative to civil marriage. Civil unions provide most of the benefits of marriage at the state level. Same-sex couples used civil unions before the Supreme Court decision in Abergefell versus Hodges granted marriage rights to all couples at the federal level. So the civil union or domestic partnerships was a concept of marriage laws pertaining to couples, and also it pertained to same-sex marriages of understanding before same-sex marriages came into law. So the same-sex marriages, meaning gay couples, was using the concept of domestic partnerships or civil unions to justify them as far as being married in a certain state. And we know, according to the Bible, having same-sex marriages or gay relationships is against the Bible. But as you can see, the state laws in America approves of same-sex couples engaging in domestic partnerships or civil unions between one another in a particular state, which, of course, in general, this is a worldly marriage law concept. Okay, so civil unions, it's all worldly concept of marriage. Okay, so they just kind of changed the name from civil unions or domestic partnerships. So a lot of people, if they didn't want to go through the traditional of civil marriage, they went through a civil union or domestic partnership of understanding to justify them as saying that they were married. Okay, so again, this is a worldly perspective of marriage laws. So none of these terms of civil union or domestic partnerships are in this Bible. The Bible is pure. The Bible says be fruitful and multiply. The Bible commands the Hebrew man, Hebrew woman to be married. Okay? And also, of course, in general, the creation of people to be married to man and woman. Okay? That's what the Bible promotes. Righteousness. Worldly marriage laws promotes wickedness. As you can see, it says civil union continue. In this point, it says documentation that can help prove domestic partnership. It says share ownership of a car or other property, proof of joint accounts, bank credit and loans, designation of primary beneficiary or benefits and wills, driver's license sharing a common address, assignment of power of attorney. So these are just points where a person can prove that they have a domestic partnership or a civil union to justify them as saying that they are married in that particular state. Okay, this is just another concept if this particular couple do not want to go through the traditional civil marriage concept. Okay, so this is just another form where proof of documentation can justify domestic partnership being conducted where they can be considered married under the civil union or domestic partnership category when it pertains to this particular marriage law concept within a certain state. But as you can see, this civil union concept is not biblical. Okay, this is all man-made concept of a certain type of marriage concept. Okay, so in this next slide, it says same-sex marriage. It says in this point, it says few issues have been more contentious in recent years than same-sex marriage. Until the first challenge in 1971, no state had any law specifically prohibiting two people of the same gender from marrying. Following the Supreme Court decision in Baker v. Nelson, most states codified marriage as between a man and a woman, because in general, in the past, the world concept of marriage was known in society as being a marriage between man and woman. Okay, but America didn't put any laws prohibiting the same-sex marriage from being conducted, right? That's what it's saying. It said no state had any law specifically prohibiting two people of the same gender from marrying. That's what it's saying. But overall, most states knew that marriage was between a man and a woman. And so in this picture, it says big no to same-sex marriage, because same-sex marriage is against Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13. If a man also lie with mankind as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. Romans chapter 1, verse 26. For this cause Elohim gave them up unto vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. So as you can see, Israel, the Bible is against homosexuality, as we can see in these examples with these chapters and verses. But in today's time, America is pushing same-sex marriage. But in the past, in the 70s and the 50s and 60s and the 40s, America government knew that marriage was not justified by same-sex marriage. So the states in the past knew that marriage was justified based upon man and woman coming together to be married. Okay, so same-sex marriage is a worldly marriage type of marriage that man came up with. Okay, so same-sex marriage is not biblical. So the states in America justify same-sex marriage. But Yahweh does not justify same-sex marriage, because same-sex marriage goes against his law, statutes, and commandments, because Yahweh commanded man and woman to be married. Yahweh never commanded same-sex couples on being married. That's a big no-no. Okay? So same-sex marriage is against Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. So this is another point to the same-sex marriage law concept, okay, which is coming from a worldly perspective on marriage laws. So it says, in 2003, Massachusetts became the first state to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. California followed in 2008. The 2015 Supreme Court decision of Bergefell versus Hodges finally guaranteed marital rights for all same-sex married couples in America. So this is also, it says the source is www.findlaw.com when it goes into family, marriage, state laws on marriage. So this is from the website called findlaw.com. So this is the source where I found this information from. So as you can see, the same-sex marriage was granted to say, hey, marital rights can be conducted for all same-sex married couples in America. This happened in 2015. So man approved of this understanding on a federal level to allow same-sex couples to be married. And it says in 2003, Massachusetts became the first state to issue marriage license to same-sex couples. So Massachusetts was the first state out of all the 50 states to say, hey, we're going to conduct same-sex marriages. Okay, but then later on, when you go into 2008, California recognized same-sex marriage to be conducted in 2008. And then when we get to 2015, this is when you have all the states in America saying now same-sex marriage can be conducted, in America. So as you can see, the same-sex marriage from a worldly marriage perspective is not biblical, because this is all worldly concept of marriage that man came up with. These are man-made types of titles pertaining to marriage. As you can see, none of these titles, are in the Bible. So as you can see, these pictures of men coming together, women coming together, as far as a marriage union, is not biblical. It's against Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. And these are Hebrew Israelites that have been adopted and brainwashed into gravitating to America ways or America customs. So America ways and America customs go against Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. So this is one of the reasons why America would be judged by fire, because it promotes wickedness in the earth. And our people, who are the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, they are lost in the sauce when it pertains to Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments, because they are following America's traditions. And America's tradition goes against Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. Okay? So, again, as you can see, majority of our people are destroyed in America because they have been brainwashed to follow wickedness and follow lust of the flesh. See, we're supposed to be following this Bible to operate in the spirit of Yahweh's righteousness, which is going into his commandments. So Yahweh's commandments is against same-sex marriages. Point blank, period. So it says in his next point, marriage license are business contracts between spouses. Marriage license are business contracts between spouses. So the certificate of a marriage license is a business contract between spouses, between man and woman, primarily. Okay? That's the concept what I'm teaching from. I'm not going to be teaching the concept of marriage, business contract between same-sex marriages. I'm not acknowledging the same-sex marriage concept. So when I say a business contract between spouses, I'm concerning between man and woman. Okay? So it says marriage licenses are business contracts for the states because marriages have legal ramifications affecting property, inheritance, and taxes. They include information as the couple's names, the date and place the license was issued, the marriage location, and the proposed marriage date. So again, this is a state law of understanding when it pertains to marriage licenses. But marriage licenses are business contracts between spouses because it involves, of course, like I said in this point, legal ramifications affecting property, inheritance, and taxes. Okay? So I push the understanding on our people who are in the Hebrew faith to get a marriage certificate or some type of paperwork in writing based upon certain things being put in place as far as a marriage being justified in the Most High Yah's eyesight, and also based upon a Hebrew couple operating in the right spirit to even get a marriage certificate, so things can be justifiable as far as inheritance or property or legal ramifications when it involves with taxes and so forth. Okay, but again, certificate of marriage is not necessarily what justifies the marriage. Okay, the marriage concept is justified according to Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments primarily. Okay, the marriage certificate is a business contract that the couple comes together with to ultimately do based upon certain things have to be passed down if somebody is affected as far as the livelihood in America. Okay? Okay, but again, marriage license concept overall is based upon a man-made concept. Okay? Marriage license in American history. So we're going to go into the history of the marriage license in America to prove that the marriage license is something newly introduced in America's history concept. Okay, it was not necessarily the understanding of something that was always around. Okay, when it pertains to marriage license being implemented in states' approval, because the state's approval is something new in the earth to justify a marriage between couples. Okay, that's something new in the earth that a state has to approve of a marriage. Okay, it says marriage license in American history. Marriage license application records from the government authorities are widely available starting from the mid-19th century. Some are available dating from the 17th century in colonial America. The source of this information is coming from the wikipedia.org, okay, when it pertains to marriage license, okay, when it pertains to the history. Okay, so as you can see, it's saying the marriage license application records from government authorities are widely available starting from the mid-19th century. So the state approval in all these states in America is a newly concept of understanding because it started in the mid-19th century. So that's years pertaining to the 1800s. Then it says some are available dating from the 17th century. Okay, some. I mean, it wasn't the majority of all the states implementing the marriage certificate to be approved from the state. So that's kind of like a newly concept that America came up with. Okay, with certain states coming up with the understanding of certifying a particular couple have been married or justifiable marriage based upon that particular state. Okay, so this is all worldly concept, as you can see. The next point says marriage license in America history continue. So it says marriage licenses are a relatively new invention for the states dating back to the 19th century. Before then, marriage was a private affair between families and didn't require government approval. Here are some key milestones. Here are some key milestones in the history of marriage licenses. Whoa, wait a minute. As you can see, marriage licenses are a relatively new invention for the states. Like I've been stating in this lesson, the marriage licensing being approved through the states is a newly concept that America came up with. Okay? And it says before then, marriage was a private affair between families. So family members was the ones giving over that marriage certificate to a particular couple. So the families of the particular husband and wife, right, were the ones implementing those marriage certificates to the husband and wife or to the son-in-law concept. Okay, as you can see, it didn't involve states being involved. It was a family affair, a private situation, because society was going off a biblical base of understanding when it pertained to marriage at one point in time. Now society is operating on a worldly based concept of marriage. It says 1639, Massachusetts became the first jurisdiction to require a marriage license. So Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts, became the first jurisdiction to require a marriage license. So that happened in 1639. So like I said, the concept of marriage in general, through history, out of all those years before we get to 1639, the marriage was pertaining to a family thing. It was a private affair between the family coming together saying this person can marry and so forth. Okay? So it says Massachusetts became the first jurisdiction. So as you can see, 1639 Massachusetts, but that was only one state that say the state has to approve of a marriage. So that was in 1639. But still around this time, marriage concept was conducted with families. Okay, families was ushering the approval for certain men or women to be married, not the state. So it says 1800s, the United States began issuing standardized marriage certificates. Exactly. Like I said earlier, right? Around the 1800s, marriage licenses was the standard as far as giving certificates based upon state approval. Okay, you can find this source on Google. Okay, so this is the records. So when we go back to the Bible doesn't require state approval. The Bible commanded man and woman to come together based upon Yahweh's righteousness, following his commandments. So as you can see, the difference of understanding from a worldly perspective what marriage is, and also from the biblical standpoint on marriage is based upon Yahweh's laws of marriage. And Yahweh's laws of marriage keeps things simple in its simplicity. Next slide says marriage license in American history. So it says for most of Western history, marriage was a private contract between two families. Like we established earlier, it was between two families or between family members as far as the concept of allowing certain people to be married. Okay? Families coming together as far as saying who they want their family members to marry to. Okay? It was pertaining to son-in-law, daughter-in-law, or son or daughter picking their partners and the family approving on the picking of that particular person, man and woman, be coming together as a marriage union. But again, the marriage union was approved by the family. Okay, that's why it says two different families were the ones approving marriages between certain family members. Okay, it says until the 16th century, Christian churches accepted the validity of a marriage on the basis of a couple's declarations. If two people claimed that they had exchanged marital vows, even without witnesses, the Catholic Church accepted that they were validly married. So again, as you can see, they didn't have to go at this time, as you can see in the 16th century, the people didn't have to go to the state to say that they were married or get approval of being married. The concept of approval came from family members. And also the Catholic Church, from a worldly base of understanding, accepted the marriage between the two partners as being valid when it pertains to man and woman coming together saying that they are married. And they was able to do that without witnesses being involved, because overall society knew that marriage was ordained by the Most High. And society knew that sex was marriage at one point in time. Society already knew this already. Okay? But the Catholic Church, we know, is not biblical. Okay? But we do know Catholic Church is based upon a wicked church organization. But in general, the society knew that marriage was an agreement between man and woman, and also sex being involved, and also them confessing that they were married. The couple had to confess that they were married as well to justify that understanding as far as saying, hey, they are quote unquote a married couple. So in this picture, this is just an example of a married couple. Okay, this is just an example that man and woman is making a stance of saying, hey, they're married. But as you can see, the woman has the dress on, the man has the pants on. It's order. So it was even order back then, back in the day. Okay, but of course this picture is not from the 16th century. Okay, so this picture can probably be the late 1800s or early 1900s. But overall, in general, our people had understanding of the proper dress code attire that separates a man from a woman. As you can see, the woman has the dress, the man has the pants on. Okay, so this source of understanding, when it pertains to this understanding on the Western history pertaining to marriage laws of understanding came from Wikipedia, okay, as you can see in the source. So as you can see, the worldly concept of marriage is not biblical, okay, overall. So in this next point, it says, Yahweh is not the author of confusion. So when we go to the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 33, it says, for Elohim is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. So again, Yahweh is not the author of confusion. So when you go into those man-made type of concepts of marriage, they are all man-made. They are all confusion. They are all confusion. It's confusion going on. So that's how we know that those titles of those certain type of title of marriage terms is not biblical. So when we go back to the worldly marriage laws concept, these different types of marriage laws concept is not biblical. All these titles of marriage concept within America's, concept of marriage, it's all confusion. And we just read that Yahweh is not the author of confusion. Point blank, period. All these different type of marriage titles is nothing but confusion. We was reading all those different types of marriages, they all confusion, right? It's all over the place. Confusion. That's why I have this picture over here to show you that these worldly marriage concept is worldly based, because we have Hebrew Israelites trying to mix some of these worldly base of concept of marriage into the Bible. They need to stop doing that, because that's an error. You cannot mix worldly marriage concept with this Bible, because this Bible is pure. This Bible is Yahweh's righteousness of understanding pertaining to marriage concept when it comes between man and woman. But when you look on this slide right here, these marriage types of laws within certain states, it's all straight confusion. Okay? So when we go back to this understanding, Yahweh is not the author of confusion. When we read the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 33. For Elohim is not the author of confusion. He's not the author of confusion. I have to say this again because we have Hebrew Israelites pushing worldly law marriage concept into the Bible. You need to stop this, you Hebrew Israelites. You're in error of your ways. But it says, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. Yahweh is about peace. Those worldly marriage type of laws do not bring peace in the household. Because it was not ordained by the Most High. That's all man-made concept that Yahweh allowed man to do, but overall, he wanted the Hebrew Israelites to follow his blueprint of marriage. That's why we have the Holy Bible around to this very day. So we can follow the instructions of the Bible. Okay? Let's go to the next point. So this is the conclusion of this understanding when it pertains to Yahweh's marriage laws versus worldly marriage laws. So this is the conclusion of this whole series that we presented on this channel. Conclusion: Yahweh's laws on marriage is perfect and it is not confusing. So when it says be fruitful and multiply between husband and wife, you don't need all those different marriage type of titles. You don't need all those different marriage type of titles that has to get approved by the state to have this understanding. This is straight, Plain as day. Be fruitful and multiply between man and woman, husband and wife. That's it. So that's why you have a picture over here, a husband and wife producing children. And they did this through sex, sexual relations. So that's why Yahweh's laws on marriage is perfect. So again, this is why we need Yahweh's laws, statutes, and commandments to have the proper understanding what marriage is. So we can produce good results within our family, to produce good results with our legacy as a people, to be Yahweh's chosen people to live by example. Because following those worldly titles on marriage, we're going to be confused out here. We're going to be destroyed mentally, physically, and also spiritually if we follow structurally those worldly marriage laws. So again, the winner of the understanding is Yahweh's laws on marriage. So Yahweh's marriage laws reign supreme over worldly marriage laws. Point blank, period. As you've been learning from this lesson series so far. So other than that, Israel, hopefully you enjoyed this series on Kingdom Builders of Israel LLC. And hopefully you share the series with your family and share the series with other brothers and sisters that's in the Hebrew truth, to let them know what the real deal is when it pertains to marriage according to the Bible. So other than that, Israel, stay tuned for more videos on Kingdom Builders of Israel LLC YouTube channel. And other than that, shalom.
Finish him! Fatality. Well done. Outstanding. Impressive. Excellent.